Bonjour, je m'appelle Marche Kopp, and I'm EDC's Acting Chief Financial Officer. I'm pleased to share with you some highlights from EDC's 2020 financial results, a year like no other. This has been an exceptionally challenging time for global markets and the Canadian economy. EDC was called upon by the Government of Canada, our shareholder, to do all we could do to support Canadian companies throughout the pandemic. As mentioned by my peers, this included the Business Credit Availability Program. Our BCAP support increased our business volumes in our financing and insurance portfolios. It also expanded our domestic offerings. We received close to $11 billion of additional capital from the Government of Canada to ensure that we were properly capitalized to support Canada's response to the pandemic. We knew Canadian companies were facing significant uncertainty, and we stepped up by providing much-needed relief. We deferred loan payments, loan guarantee fees, and insurance premiums, and we responded to substantial increases in demand for credit insurance. With all this at play, we ended the year with a net loss of $1.35 billion, which is significantly lower than what we had anticipated in our corporate plan. It's the first time in EDC's 75-plus year history that we have recorded a loss of that magnitude. And this is mostly due to provisions for losses. Given the crisis, we estimated higher provision charges on our loan portfolio, as well as an increase in the allowance for claims on insurance. I will briefly touch on each one. Let me explain the higher loan provisions. EDC has a $55 billion loan portfolio. We set up an loan allowance to reflect the potential losses we might anticipate in our loan portfolio. Each year, we adjust the allowance depending on what is occurring in our portfolio. As a result of the COVID-19 crisis, we significantly increased our allowance for credit losses by 184%. This was not unlike other financial institutions and in direct response to the economic uncertainty and challenging economic environment we were in. It is important to note that provisions for losses are estimates. They can drastically shift as economic conditions change and actual losses may vary significantly. Through the first quarter of 2021, we have seen an improvement in economic conditions. This is leading us to release some of the provisions we had put on in 2020. That said, we still have large exposures to some of the industries hardest hit by the pandemic. Now let's turn to the increase in our allowance for insurance claims. As part of our response to the pandemic, EDC enhanced its existing insurance programs to further support Canadian companies. This was most important for small and medium-sized companies that were facing liquidity challenges. We increased our exposure limits for several insurance products in response to increased demand. For example, applications for our portfolio credit insurance product were up 60% in 2020. We also saw a 50% increase in new customer signings in 2020 for our online select credit insurance product. In addition, we increased our risk appetite to cover more Canadian exporters. This additional exposure and risk led to the increase in the claims allowance. At this point, we have not experienced an increase in actual claims. However, we do expect to see increased claims materialize as the pandemic continues. As with our provisions for loan losses, our claims estimates may vary significantly from our actual experience. Despite reporting a net loss of $1.35 billion for 2020, EDC remains well positioned to support Canadian businesses during the tail end of the crisis and through the recovery. Based on EDC's 2020 financial results, the organization will be paying a $7.28 billion dividend to the Government of Canada. This includes a special dividend of $6.7 billion of excess capital from injections EDC received in 2020 to support the Government of Canada's economic response to the crisis. Thanks to EDC's very strong balance sheet, robust risk management practices, and a strong record of profitability over its 75-plus year history, EDC has been able to emerge successfully from other challenging periods in history, including the post-9/11 economic downturn and the 2008-2009 global financial crisis. I'm confident this will be no different. It certainly has been an unusual and challenging year, but we look forward to being part of helping Canadian business recover from the pandemic. And I personally am extremely proud to work for an organization that steps up during the most difficult of times. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to share any feedback or questions with us.